You and I with Rashmi Shetty is a simple attempt of bringing in stories of people you and I can draw inspiration from. Ordinary folks, extraordinary lives. Their uniqueness and individuality that make them interesting to talk to and to listen to. A reaffirmation of the fact, open your eyes wider, the world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. Hi Payal, your LinkedIn bio says globally acclaimed leadership expert, renowned speaker, executive coach, New York award-winning author, trained 1 million plus to be world-class leaders and peak performers. Amazing, impressive, and what more can I say, Payal? I'm now excited to know what your journey has been like and would love to take you through that small little reflection on the little Payal who started her journey. Where exactly did it start? How far back can you take us? And welcome on this reflective journey.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. It is such a pleasure to be here and to speak with you and to really get to know you more, So you asked about the little Payal, it reminds me of a few incidences in my life. It reminds me of a time when I was at school, and that's the time when I was in India. I have had bits of my growth here in India and then back home in the US. So this incident is when I was here in India, and while at school, we would have something called the PTM, the parent-teacher meet, and I so vividly remember one constant complaint of the teachers was that, Payal is a very talkative child. And, I was good at academics and, things were fine when it came to grades and everything. But this was a constant complaint that my parents would always hear, oh, very talkative child. And I was often told by teachers and by, the principal and while I was in class that, you should learn to stay quiet, girls do not talk like this and they do not behave like this. And as luck would have it, I am currently in a field where, Rashmi, I need to talk. Okay? Yeah. I need to bring out my viewpoints. I need to guide others, so I'm just giving you the difference of how things were when I was a child and how it is now. And another one in school was that when I was told, not to attempt writing because, oh my God, the grammar is pathetic, because here in India they would follow the British curriculum versus back what we do in the US. And it was like, oh my God, the grammar is pathetic, and you shouldn't attempt writing or anything like this. And let me tell you, Rashmi, both of my leadership books are New York award-winning books. The point I want the listener, and I want to point the listeners to this, that don't let other people's opinion about you define who you are, because no one, and I repeat this. Truly, no one in the world can recognize your potential and what's within you more than yourself.
Yes.
So, as a little Payal, I would say, if I would have let that sink into me, if I would have, let that belief get into me that, oh yeah, I shouldn't talk too much, or this is how much girls should talk, or this is how they should be very cautious of the opinion that they are sharing. I think that would have then shaped me somewhere differently than what I currently have just held myself back. And it did happen to a certain extent. I remember when I started getting when I wanted to get into writing, and everyone was telling me at that time, why don't you put all your leadership work in books? And somewhere that thought did come into my mind. No, I'm not good at writing. I was told that I'm not good at writing. How can I even attempt something like that? And it did work for a couple of years, I would say, until I really overcame that. And I said, no, you know what? Worst comes to worst, it won't be picked up by a publisher, and then we'll see what to do. But as luck would have it, as destiny would have it, one of the best publishers in New York picked up the book. It's the Routledge Publishers. And, we have our third book now coming with them. So the entire idea is, what happens to you in your childhood is not something that you need to carry with you as you grow. And I think a lot also goes to the upbringing. I know my parents, like you said, what's the little Payal like? So the upbringing, I feel your foundation is very important, Rashmi.
Yeah.
And by God's grace, so by the universe's grace, I have very loving parents, and they have emphasized education a lot in my own life. And with their love, with their blessings, things have always moved the way I think was destined for me to move.
Wow, this is so ironic in my life, Payal, because I was somebody who was so quiet and completely opposite to what I am today. I'm like a late bloomer who followed all what my teachers said, that is, girls should keep quiet, you should not talk too much, spoken only when spoken to, and hold your opinion, don't be in a hurry to give it. And much later, post my graduation and my post-graduation, I actually started blooming. So,
yeah, I think we recognize ourselves. Once we recognize ourselves, Rashmi, like you said, whether it is late bloomers or early bloomers, doesn't matter. What matters is as long as we recognize our potential, and only we can do that,
Yes, that is so true. And, some people have this huge problem that they bloom early and they reach fatigue early as well. Yes. Touch wood, you just continued blooming. So may you continue to bloom as well. And yes, so now you moved into the space of leadership training. And how did all that happen, Payal? You today are who you are, but once you finished your schooling, were you in India or in the US at that point when you finished school?
No, I was in India at that point of time. So I then continued here until my undergrad.
Okay. And then you moved to the US to do your post-graduation?
Yes.
Okay.
By that time, I had also, my journey here was really nice. I also got an opportunity to do my master's here. Okay. And then had an opportunity to work for a year or two in a workforce here before I moved there. So it's been now 22 years that I have been out of India.
Oh, okay. And when you went, was it only the US that you moved in directly to?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where my home is.
In India, were you in the different parts of the country or any one particular?
I was always in Mumbai, in Bombay. Like that time it was Bombay. Okay. By the time I went back.
And which part of the US are you in now? New York?
North Carolina. My team is in New York. Okay. And my home is in North Carolina, Raleigh.
Okay. So from Mumbai, India, which is called the New York of India in many ways for the way the city lives. To the actual New York and your journey there as a leadership coach. How has that happened? How has it been? What has it been like?
So I think it shaped up very differently than what I had thought of, So since a lot of my childhood and my young adult life was here in India, I was very busy with studies and with completing my master's and everything in human resources. And then I was generally working in everything. And when I was going back to the US, almost everyone, all friends and all relatives were like, oh, you're going into a land of opportunities and everyone is very successful there. And, it's a land where everyone attains what they want to achieve. And I was like, okay, excited at that time that yes, I'm going, back. And they were like, it's your land and this and that. And when I reached there, Rashmi, for the first few years, things were fine. I was living the American dream. Things were fine. I was working. In corporate America. And then, what really shocked me and really took me out was the fact that being in a land of opportunities, being in a country where resources are in plenty, where you have self-help and motivation is a billion-dollar industry back there. And at the same time, I was observing that there are people in the workforce who are struggling, who have come to the mid-level management level, but they aren't growing in their careers the way they should. 75% of the businesses, even back in the US, are failing as compared to any part of the world. Right. So that really began to make me feel that what is it that's missing? And there was a constant question with which everything started off. The entire success within leadership is built out of one question only, which is, why do we have so few exceptional leaders in an organization or in the world at large, right? So why do we have such a huge difference between few people? And if you see, they are not even 5 to 7% of the world's population who are really in that success bracket. And what about the others? What about the 92%, the 93% of the people, of the population in the workforce who are working hard, putting in the efforts? They are coming every day to work. They work late hours. They are working with global teams. And I think they are just delivering what they should. And yet the needle wasn't moving very significantly for them. So that question itself, that one question, that why do we have so few exceptional leaders in the world or in any organization, that became the springboard. It just made me very uneasy. And that uneasiness actually created the trajectory for doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And then while I was working, I started to do a lot of research on why this is happening, where is it happening, which parts of the world. I remember while I was working, I even hired somebody to help me into all of this. And I started sharing these nuggets of mine of leadership, which I started to know why there is this gap. So we had already by then known why this gap exists. And I would share these nuggets in my organization, or friends would call that, okay, why don't you do it in our company? And I would do it for free, because I was working and I didn't want any conflict of interest. So, I would do it for free. People started to love it, and they would actually start to practice these techniques and rituals. And that's how the entire journey went from Mumbai to New York, and that's how the entire success within leadership was born. It was born completely out of helping more and more people to become successful in their work life and to really become leaders who are transformed leaders. And that's how the entire process began. Very naturally, very organically, just helping others move ahead and moving ahead myself.
Payal, when it comes to this bit that you spoke about, helping others, and it was a very selfless journey of helping. You were not seeing what am I getting in return. It was just telling them whatever you know. And that's a very beautiful space to operate from, because it is abundance. When you are thinking of no return, but only giving. What in the needle shifted in your compass of life, wherein you decided, okay, now I can take the plunge and set out as an entrepreneur myself to give this to the world? And how did you know how to put that first step out there and then take it the right way? Was it these experiments that gave you a feedback that, what actually works?
Yes. To a major extent, yes, because I started to notice that whoever were practicing these, there were a couple of reasons. One is, people were practicing these rituals and these techniques, and they were seeing the results. And they were seeing the results not after a year or 2 years. They were seeing immediate results, like in a month or within 3 months. They were able to see, promotions that were stuck were moving, were getting through. People who were not able to communicate and with confidence were able to do it. People who were having issues with dealing with people. As a leader, you have to deal with people. they were seeing the benefit. And a lot of them who wanted to get, who really wanted to be great leaders, they were already in the managerial position, they wanted to break through and move ahead. So people were seeing the changes, and with that I began to know that yes, see, you always want to know that it's working before you really offer more and more. One is that, and I think second, what really triggered it, Rashmi, is so while I was working in different corporates and different industries there, I think one of the major things that triggered it, Rashmi, was the fact that anywhere that I was working in any company, I was outgrowing the job extremely soon. Very soon I was outgrowing the job. And I think whatever ideas I had about leadership, about growth, were not very conducive to that environment where I was. So I used to always feel the need that I need to move on and do something more, right? So that's one factor. And then I think it was just, like you say, a blessing of the universe or nature, as you would call it, is from very early on in my life, I have always had the opportunity to be associated with some of the most successful CEOs and leaders and political leaders in the world. And while associating with them, I got to know what they practice. What is it that they do in their life that makes them who they are? Why are we reading about them today? Why are we following them? So I got to see firsthand their practices. While something, now of course, now we even coach some of the biggest names in the industries. So I have learned so much from them, and that's where I realized, hey, you know what? All this is not available on public domains. We don't know what's happening inside their lives, what's happening inside their mind and their brains. And how do I get this to the people? And that's actually what really triggered off that I knew why the gap exists. I knew what these people are doing, which can help reduce the gap. So why not I take that and really start to deliver that? And that's how even the books started to come up, because the books, see, I cannot reach to everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So there is only so much of me that I can do. I can go to X number of companies and coach X number of leaders and executives. And for whatever reason, many are not able to afford our fees. Many are not able to reach out to us. And I was like, but these people need to grow. Just because they are not able to reach to me doesn't mean I cannot reach to them. And that's how the books started to come. And I said, okay, I will write everything in the books, so that generations and generations to come can read about what success within leadership is and what happens up there, which doesn't happen in the middle. And when people are reading that, they are, I have had people, Rashmi, who come and tell me, okay, this is something we never ever thought it could, it should be done. Why? Because it's not available on public domains. And there are some people who come back and tell me, oh, are these principles so simple? I said, yes, they are practicing these simple principles, which we feel it's better to practice complex things than to practice simple things. But, so that's how everything began to shape up. And this success within became globally known after that in corporates and in the lives of people who are, especially in the mid-level, mid-management level.
Okay. Payal, I am now curious. When you were working with these different people, when you were doing this study, when you're looking back now, what was that uncanny ability in you to pick these nuances in people and the way they think, that you realize that this must be the reason that it ticks with them or they're successful for whoever they are? Because many a time at the top level, yes, they are successful. There's a huge gap in between. Yes. And that gap needs to be filled. And some people just get it like it's part of their flow. While for some people, however hard they try, it just doesn't move. So if I ask you to pick from your own huge bouquet of talents that you're filled with, what is that one uncanny ability that you had to pick these, which you tried with other people and it worked? Can like you said, most of them are really simple. Sometimes it's not as complicated as we think it is. So can you just tell us what it is that gave you this clue of success with it?
So I think what you rightly said, Rashmi, is that the gap is so huge.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the reason we are working towards reducing that gap in the lives of people. The more people we are able to impact, the more lives we are changing actually in the workforce. And the aim is that we should have more people in the workforce being successful, not just the top 10% or 15%. So one of the major things that I have seen that really differentiates between the people who are up there and the people, like you said, are in the middle and they are struggling. One of the biggest thing I have seen is their routine, is their everyday routine. The way that these people have a daily routine. I have never ever heard them speak about motivation from outside. Never. You must have heard, there are so many of us who rely on motivational speakers. Okay, now I'm not against any motivational speakers. It's just that I feel, and here's what my clients feel, is that motivation can only take you this far. Okay, and then you're making yourself dependent on someone from outside to come and motivate you, to come and tell you and pat your back and say, hey, you know what, this is what you should do. You're great at it. Yeah, it's good. It's good if someone recognizes your potential, but what if there are two things. What if that person doesn't recognize your potential? So you're going to be in a waiting period all the time. That person himself or herself is dependent on the universe. Okay. So basically you are depending on someone who is dependent on something else. So what I have really seen from these people who are achievers, really high achievers, they have a very disciplined life. Disciplined life, disciplined thinking, both. They do not wait for outer factors to change, outer environment to help them. They are not dependent on the economy. That's the reason the second book had been titled as Achieve Unstoppable Success in Any Economy. Whether the economy is a thriving one or the economy is what we are right now in, which is creating a big vortex. Whatever it is, you should be knowing how to move ahead. So that's one of the biggest difference that I have noticed. Like you said, if I was to pick up one, it would be their disciplined way of thinking and behaving every single day.
Okay. And for you, Payal, what has been that driving force from within that has been the reason for you to move the way you are moving?
Oh, I will tell you very honestly, very, very honestly, Rashmi, it's always been the people. The fact that I saw, if you were to meet people the way I do every single day, doing some workshops, coaching people throughout in so many years, you would be really shocked in seeing that despite being in an era of communication, best resources, information, every information is available today. People just are not able to fill that gap in their work life from where they are to where they want to be. And the more we help, the more they are getting successful, the more I think that's putting me out there that, yes, you know what, they have done this, now they need to do this. So that really, every morning, this is something that has happened for many years. It is something I say it in my books, in all of my workshops. Every single morning, if you can wake up with just one thought or one question, how can I make a difference in the lives of people? I think that will be a game changer in your own life. So just adding value to people's life, Rashmi, gives me that motivation from inside that, yes, I need to help them as long as I can and as long as God permits me.
Okay. Beautiful, Payal. Because I think there, like you said, there needs to be a question whose answer you're seeking, and that kind of drives you out of bed and out there in the world as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, look at you, you're doing such a wonderful job just, putting all this together. It just shows that you are excited to bring people together.
The idea why even you and I was born is because everyone was like bored. February this year, the wave had really calmed down. It was not as bad as it turned in March, but February was a calm phase and people were slowly getting back to routine, when all I could hear was no gratitude, but oh my God, we can't go to the mall. It's so boring. We have to wear a mask. And I'm like, that's the least you should do in order to keep yourself safe. And high time now to put out these stories of people who've gone beyond themselves. Because I think the moment you set out beyond yourself, you find yourself.
Yes.
And there's so much out there that people are doing which needs to go out. And that is the reason why this baby step of you and I with Rashmi Shetty came in, because everyone has this uniqueness and individuality which needs to be highlighted.
Yes. And I think that's a great work you're doing of just putting this out there during a time, I think, when it's most needed, Rashmi.
Thank you, Payal. And now to come to your uniqueness and individuality. Sure. So when it comes to you, I have noticed right from the way you are speaking of how your life and the trajectory of your life has been something which was very focused. Was there any time in your life, Payal, where you didn't have this focus and you just were like all over enjoying everything, and suddenly you were like, no, I need to come to one particular point? Or because sometimes, when we are doing all these amazing work with a lot of people, we spread ourselves very thin.
Yes.
So was there such moments with you as well, Payal, when you spread yourself thin and then had to collect yourself?
I think when it came, like when your first question was like, the focus, definitely it's not always been like this. When you're growing up, when you're a young adult, when you're in the youth time, especially, there is no focus as in such. And I'll be honest, that's the reason I really, really encourage my daughter. She is now going to be 20 years old. But from the time that she has been a teenager, Rashmi, I have really encouraged her to be very focused from now on, like from early ages, so that it can really help in the future. So I think at that point we were not very focused. I see teens of today more focused than what I was ever. They have more knowledge than I could ever have at that age. They know more. And somehow the teens today, the millennials, they make great decisions. I never made those decisions in those years. So I am very, very amazed. And, I really commend, it's very commendable the way the millennials and this generation, even though we call them the next generation, they really know what they want. Even if they want it quick, but they know what they want. I had no idea of what I want as such, I just went with the flow. So I went on to do my graduation, just the normal way, like everyone would do in those years, this is the years of the 90s, and joined the workforce. But I absolutely, Rashmi, had no focus that this is what I aim to do until when I become the HR manager. And that's what made me realize that yes, there is leadership and so much can be done. So that's where the focus came from. There were times when I had spread myself thin, like you had asked. When there's a time in your work when you feel you can be everything to everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you want to do it. You feel, oh my God, if I don't do it now, I don't know, it will never happen. Yeah. And that's the time you feel I should get into this A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, everything together. But then you realize that, if you do that, it doesn't help anyone. You're not able to give your best outside there, what you want to do. And that's when you start to compose yourself back. You start to really take a step back, reflect and think, what is it that I want to do and what is it that I should do? And I think that happens in everybody's life. Everyone at some point or the other loses that track, and then we realize it. The main idea is that even if you go off track, how do you come back on track? I think that's the important question that each of us need to ask ourselves.
And since you have been interacting and learning a lot from leaders, and you have put it out there for the world to also see what is it that they do and do consistently. For you, Payal, what is it that has helped you become what you have become? If you are going to look back into your life, a peep into who Payal is, and see what is it that triggers Payal to do what Payal wants to do?
I think what triggers me and still does, Rashmi, to a large extent is the dedication towards leadership. I have a lot of passion for leadership, and there is a reason why I have this passion for leadership. And it started way back in the year, I think it was 1997. It was my very first job, Rashmi, in the field of HR. Okay? And I was in the F&B industry. I was assigned the basic HR role. When you come out of management college, you get the basic HR role, and that's what I was doing. And as I was going around doing my work, and I got to know that there was a huge union problem in here, and the HR head of that F&B of that chain of restaurants, he had resigned around 6 months before my joining. And the staff at that time was more than 1,000 or something, I think. And they had no leader as such in the HR. They had no direction. The only leader they had was the F&B manager, who would mostly direct on the F&B aspects of the work. And so the union was taking advantage of this. Now, being the type of person I always was, I wrote a note, to the consultant, who was also a lawyer for this company. He would come for weekly rounds and see if everything was good, with the staff and everything. So I wrote to him, and I said, I still remember, I wrote to him that, look, I am from the HR background. I've done my MBA, and I feel my skills and abilities here are being very underutilized. I'm not doing the things that I should. And then I wrote a sentence in the end. I said, look, I can help the company get union free. And that was a very, very big statement to make from someone who has just joined the company. And
exactly. But what gave you the courage?
So, like I said, it was just the way I was, and I just wrote that statement, and then the next day, when he came for his round the next week, he met with me, and he spoke to me, and I said, look, you give me this opportunity. Worst comes to us, it will not work. As it is, you don't have an HR leader here, and worst comes to us, it will not work. But you won't lose anything, okay? And you are with me. And then I remember how he went and spoke with the head of the owner of these chain of restaurants, and he said, okay, let's try this. And he mentored me. The consultant, I still remember his name is Mr. Upadhyay. He actually mentored me, helped me to really take that stand, to make my vision of getting this company union free come alive. And it did happen. I must have worked with every staff member there. I must have been the only woman because F&B doesn't have, in those days, never had women,
correct.
As leaders, or even in the, I think they were only at the reception or something. So I remember taking that lead and really getting the company union free and becoming the complete HR head of Pan India for them later on. And this happened all in a span of 6 to 7 months, Rashmi. It has not taken 3 years or 4 years to get there. And that's when I realized that a leader can either make their people or break their people. And that's when I realized that everything in our life is because of leadership. And that's the reason why I do what I do. I am very, very passionate about leadership, because everything in your life is because of leadership. It depends on leadership. Nothing will ever surpass it. And that I have seen how people succeed in their life if they just know how to be a transformed leader, not a trained leader. There's a very big difference between both. And that's where it becomes the game changer for everyone. So that's something, like you said, what keeps me going, it is that leadership. I'm very, very passionate about it.
Oh, wow. Okay, so here you brought in two very powerful words, trained leader and transformed leader. So like you spoke about motivation, do you also believe transformation is from within?
Yes.
And what triggers transformation, Payal? Does it have to have some real shake from within for the transformation to happen? Or is transformation a very gradual process?
No, I think, Rashmi, what you said is right. Does something have to happen for transformation to happen? Yes. Transformation happens because of two reasons, either for inspiration or because of desperation. So either you are very, very inspired to do something in your life, either for yourself to change your circumstances or to move out of something, or to give your best to the world, or you are really desperate about something. Maybe you're in pain and that pain has to somehow change. Maybe you are desperate to solve a problem in the world or in your organization or in your environment that is not letting you sit at rest. For me, it came, the transformation for me came more out of the desperation, because like I mentioned, I was really desperate to get to this gap that, why do we have such few people successful, And that created an inspiration for me to get to where it is. The transformation will always be from within, and you just have to know whether you are doing it out of inspiration or are you doing it really out of a desperate, to change something.
Okay, so now inspiration and desperation are two ends of a spectrum, Payal. Yeah. So inspiration can be positive. Desperation is where you're pushed literally to the wall and you have to survive. So where have you noticed that leaders have brought their best out? Is it when they had operated from desperation, or was it inspiration?
So I think, Rashmi, this would be very, very individualized question, because everyone's life circumstances are very different.
Yes.
So in the circumstance and the environment in which you are, maybe you are inspired to do something and you're doing it. In an environment where someone is living for their survival, they will be desperate to do it. Yes. The idea is, as long as it brings the transformation and gets you to the results, as long as it gets you to do what you want to do, that's what counts at the end of it.
Oh, wow. So transformation is pretty simple then.
Yeah. It really doesn't matter. You don't have to go one way. Either ends of the spectrum are good as long as it helps you.
Yeah. Now, here... being a coach, okay, Payal, I call myself a self-expression coach because I work with people's voice since I've been in the voice space for 17 years plus now. And I realized that communication is such a big hassle for a lot of women especially. And I have noticed in the women leaders that I coach, there's so much of hesitation to speak what you want to say. And when asked, why didn't you say this? This was a brilliant suggestion. It's like nobody looked in my direction. Nobody asked me. So that's why I thought there was no need to share it. And to bring out that leader within, to speak because you're saying something, not because you're going to be upset about being rejected, but just adding value to the space, changes a lot in the way you communicate. What have you noticed about these leaders that you have seen, the top 10% you spoke about? As far as communication goes, what have you noticed is the key skill that they have in order to put across whatever they think?
I think one of the major key skills, Rashmi, has been confidence. Right. One of the major I have seen is the confidence and confidence to speak out their opinions, confidence to speak their mind out, and confidence to accept criticism and accept rejections. When you build that confidence, you are able to actually go out there and share what you have, because you're not afraid of being judged. You're not afraid of being rejected, or you don't have a fear in your mind that, what will people say? Will people like my opinion? Will they be fine? Will they support me? You're not really worried about those likes and those supports.
Yeah. So when they let go of that validation of the external world, that's where the confidence creeps in. That's so true. And is confidence, there is the statement, fake it till you make it. So is confidence one of those skills that you can fake till you make? Or how do you build that? Because according to me, confidence is a muscle. You just need to practice it and build it.
Practice it, yes. Absolutely. I think that what you're saying is correct. Confidence has a lot to do with, with how you are practicing and what you are bringing on the table. One of the things that I have noticed, in people is that most of us, we believe that confidence comes from outside. We believe that, somebody is going to come and help us with building the confidence. We read so many books on confidence, but really nothing helps much the way we are. So I think one of the things is we have a lot of fear in ourselves. Now we have fear of insecurities. We have a low self-worth. We are really motivated more by our fears than the faith that we could have on our own abilities and in our own self, And we also tend to go by the worth people set on us. I remember here there was this very, very nice quote given by, I think it was Mary Ann Williamson, who said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure."
Okay.
So I think we need to sit back and think what would happen, what would happen if we would go out there and take action without having the fear of losing. What would happen? What actions would we take then? And this question on confidence, I think there was a question that someone had asked me, which I had put up on my YouTube channel. It was very similar to something on fear. So I think one of the things that I had said in that was that when I had made that video was that you need to train yourself to let go of everything that you fear to lose. And that's when you will find the courage to go behind those things that you really want to achieve.
Very well put, very well said. And that's so applicable to the leaders who have created an impact. I think letting go of fear is one aspect that comes out the moment you believe truly who you can be, and that's where you are going, and your journey is on the right road. I think that's when letting go of fear happens a lot more easier. Very, very beautifully put, Payal. Lovely. And at this moment, when it comes to women leaders, what have you seen in the leadership sessions that you have done, the personal growth sessions that you have done with leadership? What have you noticed about women leaders? And is it different when women start climbing the corporate ladder in comparison to men?
Different, like in what way? In what way would you?
Is their approach a lot different emotion-wise? Because women are wired differently. And after a certain point in leadership, male, female doesn't exist. The difference doesn't exist because everyone has to bring in the feminine energy of empathy and all that to play. So in the journey to the top, what have you noticed in the leadership journeys of people you have trained, met, and seen? Demarcates the one who will definitely reach that 10% to the ones who will not. Are there some specific things you have noticed?
Yes, Rashmi, definitely. So most of my work happens, with men, because these are executives at higher levels, and we've been really. I've seen in the boardrooms, I've seen in the training rooms. If there are 50 participants, there are so many times that there are only 10 or 12 women, and the rest are all men. So if I was doing so like I said, my work involves both men and women, and if I was to put the focus and the spotlight on women, and is there anything different in the strategies? And so yes, I have seen that there are a couple of differences. One of them being that men, when they are offered leadership positions, they usually grab it. They usually say yes, oh, that's great, and they would take it. Women, on the other hand, they tend to really, really overthink. Now, I don't know whether it is overthink or thinking, but what usually happens, Rashmi, is that, I've had instances where a woman has come to me for one-on-one coaching and said that, hey, you know what, I was given the director's role, but I had to decline it. And I said, okay, what do you mean by you had to decline it? Like, who forced you to decline it,
Yeah.
And she said, no, Payal, I was really worried, how will I manage, So how will I manage the house front, and how will I home front, and how will I manage the office? What about if there are pressures? What about if I cannot live up to the office commitments? What's going to happen at the home front? And she had children and everything. So here's a big thing, that I've seen. Women are really afraid to commit. They are afraid to make that huge commitment at work for the fear of failing to make the commitment at home. And if you see, it's only a fear. There is no guarantee that you will fail at the home, or you will fail at the office. There is no guarantee. It's a fear in your mind. That's the only thing it is. So, what happens here, Rashmi, is because of that, we tend to feel, and somehow women have, and I don't know whether this is culturally to India or is it worldwide, at least I've seen it more here from the time I am here since a year now, is that women are, we tend to look at women as a model of perfection, especially from the home front. I'm talking about the home front and the society. And somehow we accept it. And because we accept it, we are very fearful to lose that perfection status that we have got. Whereas there is no need to be perfect. I always feel a home is a responsibility of everyone who is at home.
Precisely.
Now, whether it's your spouse, or whether it is you, it is your children, it is your anyone who is in your home has equal responsibility of the house. So I think that's one place where women fall short, is they really worry, what if I become a director? What's going to happen back here? So that's a worry you need to really play it out and really work it out in yourself. And I've coached so many women just based on this one aspect. And the second I have seen is, women tend to hold back their abilities more than men. So a very classic example is I was coaching a woman from Amazon, and it was a very nice thing that she said. She said, "Hey, you know what? My manager was offering me this project." And it was a very high visibility project, Payal, but I could not take it up because you need 75% of the skills in that, and I really have only around 45 to 50%, not much. And the irony is that the person who got the project is someone, her colleague, and he got the project, and he doesn't even have 50% of the skills. On to work on that project, but it's the way he has the confidence that he will learn it, he will pick it up, and he will anyhow get it delivered. So here's a big difference I have noticed, Rashmi, is that women, even if they have 75% or of the skill set, they will feel, oh, I'm missing 25. And the men will feel, oh, I have 50%, I'm only missing 25. That's fine, I'll go ahead with it, So
and that's such a huge difference, demarcator, right?
But then that's how they grab the project. You need to know that nobody is 100% perfect. And that's, again, it comes to the perfection, I need to know 75%. They have said this requires. Great, I know 45%. I will learn the rest, the remaining of it, right? That's exactly the type of mindset that you need to build if you want to take risks, if you want to move ahead. Because to move ahead, you don't know the 100%, but even if you know 50, you're good. The other 50 will come while you are in there struggling and getting through it.
Yeah.
Those are the two major ones I have really observed.
Okay. That and on that very observatory note, one more observation that I want from you is looking back at the pandemic in the last 1.5 years, Payal. There is a lot that the pandemic has taught us. Each one has taken his or her own lessons from it. And overall, as somebody who works with leaders day in and day out, what have you noticed as shifts in the industry and the attitude of the industry per se, which have really taken place, and you know that this is going to stay? How has the pandemic transformed the energy in the markets, in the workspace, in the leadership space? Have you noticed anything?
Yeah, I think it has shown each of us our ability or lack of it to deal with such circumstances. So, it is evident that, leaders have to really manifest hope and resilience in these testing times, right?
Yes.
How will COVID-19 change the world? Well, nobody knows. I've been having many executives who would be asking questions to us that, when is this going to end? How is it going to change? See, right now, the picture is very unclear for anyone, whether we don't even know if a V-shaped recovery is predicted soon, or whether there will be no return to normal. The world will change as it does after any social and economic event of this magnitude. The world will change. Right now, it is said that there was a book that I had read. My father had gifted me this book very early in my life. Tough times don't last, but tough people
do. Yeah.
It's a wonderful book, and I think that's one book that's very close to my heart. It's always with me because it really it reminds you that tough times separate the mediocre leaders from the exceptional ones. And it is in these moments of truth and how leaders face them in real time that will make way for a better tomorrow once the crisis is over. So I think this crisis has taught one major thing to us, that we need to stop blaming the environment and the economy and for anything that happens to us, right? So see, these are not unprecedented times. Unprecedented times have always been there in business. I've seen businesses, falling and coming up. I feel these are evolving times. The crisis is telling us that it's time to evolve. Don't sit in your comfort zone, right? It's time to evolve. Businesses evolve. That's how we have come from the industrial age to the AI age. So evolving is one of the major lessons we need to learn, so that going forward, there will be challenges, there will be more pandemics, there will be more crises. We've all gone through that American recession. I mean, the world has gone through it, through recessions and world wars and everything. So what we really need to learn and what we need to leave for the coming generation in the workforce is know that there will be changes, there will be crisis. You have to evolve yourself every day. Don't wait for crisis to evolve you. I think that's the biggest lesson we all should learn or must learn from this pandemic going forward now.
Oh, lovely take on evolution and how not to wait. And Payal, we've reached that point of the interview where I would like you to leave us with 3 life lessons of yours.
Okay, if I would start to one, I would say you can't sow the seed and reap the harvest in the same season. That's one of my life lessons, that you can't sow the seed and reap the harvest in the same season. There is a season of sowing and there is a season of harvest. However, most of the people are very, very, very eager and very in a hurry to get to the season of harvest, which is, to get to success. And in that hurry, they keep jumping from one place to another. And when they don't get that success, that harvest that they were looking for, it really demotivates them. And then they change their track and then they start feeling, oh, this is not for me. So the season of sowing is very difficult. And you may feel that you aren't seeing any results. But if you keep watering and taking care of that seed, eventually your harvest season will be in plenty. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, keep moving. As they say, a rolling stone does not gather moss. However difficult your situation is or maybe, just take one small action towards your goal. That's something I've learned, that it's every step is important to reach to the 10th step. Don't stop, don't blame, don't miss steps. Just keep on moving. And this is a life lesson that I learned. I was very inspired by the movie Finding Nemo, if you've seen it. And that's where Dorothy is always reminding Nemo to keep on swimming. And I think that's a wonderful message that's been given. And the third and the last one I would say is trust the process. Okay, now this is something you will read in all of my books. There is a chapter in the second book, I think, Achieve Unstoppable Success, where I talk about how we humans have the limited ability to plan and see ahead. So if you have a purpose and a very deep-ended purpose, whether it is small, big, doesn't matter, then all that you need to do is work hard and trust the process. If it has brought you till here, it will take you to where you need to be. That's the reason it has brought you till here. And let me tell you, Rashmi, it's very, 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 and I'm stressing the very, very hard to trust the unknown process, especially when you don't see any results. It's very hard.
Completely with you on that, because I'm sure many of us can resonate when you say that. Especially for a lot of us who ventured into something new. I think the fertilizing, seeding process till the sprouting, we don't realize is that the roots are getting deeper, and therefore it's the rooting that takes all the time and the challenge of patience.
Absolutely, and that's been the hardest even for me. It was always hard, but I learned through it, and it's hard to stick to your route and keep on going without losing your track. It's hard to trust the process when you would see someone else gaining more than you in the same field or anything, and it's hard, but it's hard, but it's worth it, because when you trust the process, it takes you way ahead in the game than you ever imagined or than you ever planned for yourself.
Payal, now that you said it, I am just tempted to ask you this. You said that you will see people around you who are maybe in the same space, moving way ahead of you. And, at those moments, there is this imposter syndrome which creeps in, saying that, is it because you're not good enough that she or he has managed to take the lead? How do you stop and seize that syndrome from taking over? What do you tell yourself about the process that the syndrome doesn't take over? How do you hold yourself together?
Rashmi, that's really very true. This entire imposter syndrome, and I'll tell you, most of us, we feel it is only the women who have it, but actually even the men go through the same imposter syndrome and this. You just have to keep reminding yourself of your purpose. One thing is there, your purpose is very different from somebody else's. What you are created to do, somebody else is not created to do that. So if you see someone moving ahead more than what you are, there are two reasons. One, either you are not acting enough the way you should. So either your actions are very laid back and you are not on the, your ladder is on the wrong wall itself. So you really need to check that where are you climbing? Because then if you see someone else reach, maybe that's not where you want to go. So first make that internal audit, make that internal check, that is my ladder on the wrong wall or am I in the right place? And if you are in the right space and still this is happening, then you really want to check your actions. You want to check where you are lacking. Use that as a foundation, as a tool, rather than using it as something that will demotivate you or you will self-sabotage yourself. It's not going to get you anywhere. Our mind is like a Google. The questions you ask is the answers you get. So if like you said this question, I really liked it. You said, oh my God, why am I not getting there? You ask yourself this question, your mind will say, because you are not worth it. So now what's going to happen? Now you're going to feel, oh yeah, correct, I'm not worth it. But why am I not worth it? Hey, you know what? Because you're very stupid. That's the type of questions we ask, and that's the type of answers we get, right? So when you get into that space of self-sabotaging, don't get there. Change your question. And it's very simple. Okay, what am I doing or what am I not doing that I should do so that even I can get to where I want to, not to get to where he or she has got. That is their journey. You don't look at someone's journey, you just learn from their journey. And what can I do? How do I change? What new methodology? What new innovations should I make? What's stopping me? What are some of the ways? So these questions will get you out from that mode of self-sabotaging and get you into the mode of working on yourself and working towards your goal.
Powerful, inspiring, and as you're leaving, Payal, a couple of inputs for the wannabe authors who are stopping themselves, because you've put out 2 books and your third is on the way. What does it take to be an author? Because everyone wants to be one, but what does it take to be one?
I think you have to have it from inside that this is not for you but for the others. That's my journey, Rashmi. I cannot say it for everyone, but I am not a person who likes writing or I'm a born writer, nothing like that. But it is my desire from inside that people become successful at their workplace, that they lead a fulfilled work life, that they really become that leader that they hope to become, and they make a name for themselves. So I want them to make a name for themselves. I want to see them at the top. When someone comes to me and says, hey, you know what, just practicing these techniques, Payal, in the book has been a game changer for me. That's enough for me to write my third book, which is going to be released this year, actually. So that's enough for me to keep writing and really waking up in the morning at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock just to pen them down. So I think it is something that needs to, if you're going to be writing just to become famous, I don't know where it can take anyone. Maybe you become, but at least that's not my case. So I think we really want to make sure that it's the people out there who become successful at the end of the day, and that's the reason. So when I write with the same question, and I think every author, if you're an aspiring author and you really want to get into book writing, then 2 things. One, are you really a master in offering what you're offering? Because why should someone read your book? That's always been my question. And the second is, will it change people's life for the better? That's something which I am now on my 4th book, Rashmi, but it's with the same question. Will this book make the life of the people better? Will it bring about a change in their life? And if your answer is no, then we need to hold on to that book writing and work on ourselves, and then again get back to it.
But do you believe that everyone is an author who has a story to be told?
Yeah, if you have something of, like I said, you may have a story, but is that story something that is for the benefit of someone,
Okay.
Is that story going to change someone's life for the better? Why would I write, in my books, I write my story, which is right what you're saying. I write a lot of my own personal failures and, what my clients have been through, everything. But it's with an aim that, hey, look, you know what? You're not alone in this. We've all done this, and this is how we came out of it. And if you're in this position, you try these and you'll come out of it. So your life is changed. You're not at the same place where you started reading the book. When you end the book, you're in a different space altogether.
Exactly. I think it is all about the intent, Payal, and you explained it so beautifully. It's all about the intent. This talk has come a full circle, and I see this you and I part of you, which is your uniqueness and individuality, is always about the other. What is it that they're going to take away from this? You started with that abundance, and you're ending even on your footnote as an author to aspiring authors of the intent with which you're putting out your thoughts. And if they are about making a difference to the world, go ahead and put it out there. Powerful, Payal. Thank you very, very much for your time. Admire the way you have really steered your life, your thoughts, and the entire spectrum of what all you have done to be the Payal Nanjiani that you are today. Stay blessed and continue to inspire. Thank you for being a part of You and I with Rashmi Shetty.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. And it's a powerful work you are doing. So thank you for inviting me to be here and speak to your listeners. And I really wish everyone loads of success. And I am a connector. So I am very, very happy that if you have listened to Rashmi Shetty's You and I, and you would like to connect with me on any of the social media platforms, please just refer Rashmi and we will be very happy to accept that connection.
And wishing you a lot more moments and people that you touch and make a difference, Payal. Take care.
Yeah. Take care.
With that, we come to the end of this weekly quest of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know people who make the world beautiful. Write in to rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. Come, let's explore this amazing world together, both you and I.